So you've had a chance to look at things. The Browns will play differently under Kevin Stefanski offensively.
Right.
Let's dive into the roster. What are some of the things that the Browns need to upgrade and improve the way Kevin Stefanski wants them to play on the offensive side of the ball?
Right. Well, let's get the obvious out of the way. Regardless of coach, there's some offensive line issues with this team. So they're going to have to address the offensive tackle, both sides, left and right, and that right guard spot. So that's going to happen regardless of what coach came in here, whether that's through the draft or free agency, possibly a trade now, as news broke last night on a guy who might be on the trade market now. So that's the first and most important thing. You got to protect Baker Mayfield and figure out who you have there as an investment. After that, Kevin Stefanski, coming from Minnesota, running a Gary Kubiak offense, they featured a lot of 2, even 3 tight end sets, and that's one of the weaker positions on this team right now with the Cleveland Browns. It sounds like David Njoku will be back, but after that, we're not really sure. Steven Carlson had some moments last year, but after those 2 guys, we're not really sure. And in Minnesota, they had 2 solid guys, Kyle Rudolph and then the rookie out of Alabama. So I would say on the offensive side of the ball, those are the 2 top spots. I mean, really 3 across the offensive line, and then finding some answers and ultimately depth at tight end.
I know you've looked at the offense that they ran in Minnesota. What do you like about it? What do you get a feel for as far as what that offense is and what it wants to do?
Right. So it's a lot of zone offense, zone running scheme, wide zone, inside zone in your simplest forms. Play action passing. Look, Baker Mayfield's going to have an opportunity to look off defenders and hit guys deep like Odell Beckham Jr. Stephon Diggs for the Minnesota Vikings led the league in deep target share yards, and their games are a bit comparable. You know, Odell might be the flashier, more Hollywood guy, but both Stephon Diggs and Odell Beckham are going to be able to stretch the field in that way. And in Minnesota, it was the Dalvin Cook show, and I expect it to still be the Nick Chubb show here in Cleveland, but then you can sprinkle in Kareem Hunt, which is a weapon Kevin Stefanski didn't have in Minnesota. So it's going to be a lot of play action, like I said, wide zone, capitalizing on both Chubb and Kareem Hunt's ability to get to the outside, and then on those second and mediums, third and shorts, expect some deep passes. That ultimately, in its simplest form, is what Kevin Stefanski is going to do with this offense.
What about the way that impacts a guy like Baker Mayfield? I mean, it would seem to play to his strengths.
Yeah, and that's what you're hoping for. Baker is going to have to take advantage of one-on-one coverage because these teams are going to have to come down, stack the box against guys, like I said, Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. Where you worry with Baker last year was when you get him into these 5- and 7-step drops and you have 3, 4 guys running deep, and with an offensive line in front of him that couldn't hold for those 4 or 5 seconds you need, that's where you worry. The goal, again, is to simplify this offense, make Baker's reads a lot easier, and with the addition of Alex Van Pelt at his press conference, he spoke about working on Baker just as a football player. His footwork needs help. He wants to switch which foot he's going to have forward. So from scheme all the way to fundamentals, they're bringing everyone in here to really help Baker to put his best foot forward in 2020.
The other thing about it is it seems like last year they just didn't play to their strengths. I mean, it's kind of like, well, we're going to do this regardless of whether we have the guys to do it or not.
Right, and that's exactly how it felt. And to a point, it felt like they just were calling plays to calling them. Kevin Stefanski is Ivy League guy. This whole regime seems like they're Ivy League now, right? And he's going to find the mismatches and exploit them. It's going to be, of course, up to Baker Mayfield to take those calls and those reads and make the right decisions. But Stefanski's a guy who's going to put Baker Mayfield in the right position. Kirk Cousins just came off probably his best career year in Minnesota, so the ingredients are all there. It's really going to be on Baker this year, assuming everything comes together like it did in Minnesota, which from what I've heard from my connections in the Minneapolis media, Kevin Stefanski checks out, and it sounds like he's not going to have the play calling responsibilities either, so he'll just be able to focus on the game plan and being a head coach, something that Freddie Kitchens didn't do last year either.